Okay, good evening, everyone. I think we're going to get started in just a moment. Okay. Good evening. My name is Michelle Pesci. I am the chairperson of the Pupil Personnel Services Department. Welcome to our 11th grade parent night. I really appreciate all of you coming out tonight. I think it's rained every single parent night that we've had, and this is the last one, so I guess we're just being consistent. But this is a really important evening. We have a ton of information. 11th grade is such an important year. We wanted to have this parent night early enough in the school year to really prepare you, let you know all the great things that we're doing with your students to prepare them for college and answer any questions that you have. If you are not aware, our department has had a lot of changes in the past year or so. So I just want to start by introducing some of the members of our department, the school counselors, who work with all of your children in their college and career readiness program. So like I said, my name is Michelle Pesci. I'm the chairperson. We have 8 school counselors on our staff. 2 are middle school counselors, Mr. Gagnon and Ms. Tenisella, and the remainder of our school counselors work with high school students exclusively. Mr. Shireen Cobb was in the back greeting you as you walked in, Mrs. Loudon-Slager, Mr. Mitchell, and Dr. Valdez. And then our 2 speakers this evening, Ms. Lauren Pulsifer and Ms. Samantha Marino, are our other 2 high school counselors. So I just wanted you to be familiar with who they are. These are your child's school counselor. They will remain their school counselor until they graduate and work with them every step of the way through the college process and talk to them about their future plans. We are live recording this evening for families that couldn't make it out. I know this is a very busy time of the year. So we ask that if you have questions throughout, to maybe just hold them off to the end, and we'll answer every question, hopefully through the presentation, but we will definitely answer your specific questions at the end of the presentation as well. So for tonight, some of the topics that we'll cover are starting to discuss what are colleges looking for. So what goes into a college application, what types of applicants we're looking for, how we're looking to prepare our students. We will discuss standardized tests, the PSAT, SAT, and ACT. The college search process, so where do you begin if you haven't already done so, or where are you at in the process now? We'll discuss a little bit about college application deadlines, because at this point next year, your children will probably have already applied to colleges or be in the process of finishing up their applications. We'll discuss a little bit about financial aid and scholarships. We'll inform you about a financial aid night we're going to have coming up in the late summer, early fall. We'll talk to you a little bit about NCAA requirements if you have a child who's interested in playing sports at the collegiate level. And then a little bit about social emotional learning and how we can really help support your entire family through this process, because it could be a little stressful. So I am going to turn it over to our 2 school counselors who will start the presentation, and then at the end I'll come back and we'll open it up to questions on the floor. So thank you again for joining us, and here we go.
Hi everyone, I'm Ms. Marino. So this is actually a list of items that are going to be included in your student's college's application. So the very first thing that the colleges are going to look at are a transcript. So they're going to look at your student's transcript, and the transcript is going to be their academic record from 9th through 12th grade. There might be some 8th grade classes on there where they took Regents exams. And the colleges are really going to look at the transcript and see, did the student challenge themselves in any way possible if they were able to? That's what the rigor of classes is, as well as their grades and their final GPA. So at New Hyde Park Memorial High School, at the end of 11th grade, our students will have their GPA accumulated from all those previous years, and that GPA at the end of this year is going to be what colleges see. So we tell our students, do the best you can this year, go to Operation Success or the Homework Center to study the best that you can, so that way you can raise your GPA up a little bit for college applications for your senior year. Another part of the college application process will be the standardized tests, so that's the SAT or the ACTs. We're going to go into this at length in a little bit, but I just wanted to make note that in the 2022 and 2023 year admission cycle, a lot of colleges have gone test optional. We are unsure what the trend will be for next year, so we are encouraging all of our students to take the SAT or the ACT this year. But we'll see what happens for next year. We still have colleges that will stay test optional. They've told us that. but some are unsure. So we want them to do the absolutely best that they can on those tests. Essays are included in the college application process. Every student will be writing one at least, but some colleges, such as Hofstra, have what's called supplemental essays. And the supplemental essays are usually shorter than the standard one, and they'll ask questions like, why do you want to apply to Hofstra? So it is the student's responsibility to keep track of that information. The resume, which is extracurricular activities such as clubs, sports, jobs, service, and then any leadership in those positions. Teacher letters of recommendation. We require students to ask 2 teachers for letters of recommendation. They will be doing that by the end of this year, so they should start to think about who they want to ask now. And as well as demonstrated interest. So some colleges track whether or not a student is showing interest in that university, and that could be by attending webinars online or taking a tour of the campus.
Thank you, Ms. Marino. My name is Ms. Pulsifer, and I'm going to talk to everyone a little bit about standardized testing. So back on October 12th, all juniors were given the opportunity to take the PSAT exam, which is a practice SAT exam. It's a shortened version of the SAT, which is designed to help students get prepared to take the major test later this year. We actually went into all of the junior classrooms last week to talk about the students' scores and how they should be interpreting them. But for the PSAT, scores look a little bit different than for the SAT. So scores for the PSAT typically range from 160 to 760 for each section. So there's 2 different sections. There's the math and the reading and writing sections. And the maximum score that a student can get on the PSAT is a 1520. There's also a component to it called the NMSQT, which stands for the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. So every student in the country that took this PSAT exam is automatically entered into this scholarship opportunity. So essentially they will be notified typically around September if they will move on in that scholarship process. So there are several steps that need to be taken, but if you have any questions about the NMSQT portion of the PSAT, you can always reach out to your student's counselor. And now we'll talk about some additional standardized tests that everyone should be aware of. So the PSAT was a practice for the SAT exam, and there's also an exam called the ACT. So students can choose to take either the SAT or the ACT, or they can actually choose to take both. All colleges will accept both exams now. It used to be that certain West Coast schools would accept the ACT over the SAT, but now it's really become more of a widespread test. Students can also choose which scores to send. So we will be working with students to determine which are the best scores and which are going to highlight them the best, and which do we want to send to colleges. So just because a student may take an SAT or an ACT exam, it does not mean that they have to send those scores to colleges, and no one will see those scores unless that student chooses to send them. Some colleges will also use what's called a super score. Basically that means is that they'll look at multiple test dates and they'll choose the higher of each of the sections to combine it into one higher score for that student. Typically we see that colleges accept that more so with the SAT than the ACT. And there also are some differences between these 2 tests. So we get a lot of questions about, well, which one should my child take? What are the differences between them? So both the SAT and the ACT will cover your typical math, reading and writing sections, English sections, but the ACT does have a science reasoning section on it. So the science reasoning can be a little bit misleading. Sometimes students think, well, if I'm not an AP science student, does that mean that I'm not going to do well on the ACT? That is not the case. The science section on the ACT is actually more about word comprehension in science terms, less so about the total knowledge that the student has in science. The ACT also has an optional essay portion that the student can choose to take. Not many colleges will require this optional essay, but it is there for students that choose to take it. Both tests are around 3 hours long. However, if a student decides to take that optional essay for ACT, it will extend the time on that test to about 3 hours, 40 minutes. For the SAT, scores can range from 400 to a 1600, while on the ACT, you'll see scores from a 1 to a 36. They're both around the same cost, and we also listed here for you where students can register for these exams. So I'm going to talk about when the dates are offered and when students should be registering in a moment. But how should your student decide which test to take? So the best way to know is to take a practice exam. So I'm going to cover here some different test prep options that offer free practice exams. So you can see here the first 3 options are all private companies that offer test prep. There are lots of companies out there that offer paid test prep. These are just some reputable companies that our students have worked with, like Test Takers, Princeton Review, and Kaplan. Now, pretty much all of these companies will offer online test prep, and also you can go in person to one of their centers. But the one I really want to highlight is Method Learning. So you may have also heard it called Method Test Prep, I believe was their old name. They rebranded to be called Method Learning. So our school district has partnered with Method Learning to provide free and heavily discounted test prep to all of our students. So it's something that I think every student should really take advantage of. They have an application on their CASA Learning account called Methodize, where they can access free online PSAT, SAT, and ACT test prep. So they can take full-length practice tests, they can take little mini quizzes, and there's other test prep options. So that's great for those students that are a little bit more self-motivated because it is a self-paced test prep option. They also have in-person locations where students can go and maybe even take a diagnostic test where they'll actually mimic real test conditions so the student can see, how would a real ACT test go.
I just want to make mention, we didn't say this earlier, I apologize about that. This entire presentation will be available online, so all these links that you're seeing right here, so for people taking photos, you'll be able to click on them and use that link directly to access them.
Yes, great point. There are a lot of live links in here that you can click to access at a later point. So with Method Learning, they are offering 2 courses. Actually, I believe they added a 3rd section of the in-person course. Test prep options for the March SAT for all students in our district. And this is actually a really wonderful opportunity that we're really excited to offer our students because the price that it's offered is really great compared to a lot of the other private companies that you might go to. So each of these has 9 2-hour sessions in the evenings. There's an in-person class at Cary High School, and there's also an online class if your student prefers that. And it's going to be starting up in January. So I would highly encourage parents and students, if you're looking for hands-on, in-person test prep options, this is a great opportunity for you. We have the flyers up here if you want to take a picture or look at the PowerPoint at a later date. But we've also posted this on the Students Class of 2024 Guidance Google Classroom page. So it should already be on there if students want to go and access that. Yep. So that option that I just discussed, as I said, is for the March 11th SAT. So the first SAT that's going to be offered this spring is March 11th, and we're actually offering it here at New Hyde Park High School. So students have already started to register for this test. If your student thinks they might be more comfortable to take the test in our building, I would definitely encourage them to register sooner rather than later. We can also see the registration deadlines here. So another big question that we get is, when should my student take these tests and how many should they take? So we definitely encourage all students to take at least one of these tests in the spring, if not 2. There are additional test dates offered in the fall. We don't have them on the screen here, but there are dates typically in October, November, December. But keep in mind, that's going to be in that student's senior year when they're going to be very busy with their college applications. So you just want to keep that in mind to try to balance their time if they're able to take some of these tests now, that's definitely a good option. For the May 6th exam, for our AP students taking AP exams, that might be a little bit of a busier time, so maybe it would be good to start with the March exam and then do a June exam to kind of balance it out. We also have here the ACT dates. So you can see that the ACT dates are typically offered on opposite months of the SAT, which is nice for students who might want to try both. And just a note here for the July date, the summer date for ACT, it's typically non-scheduled in New York. So I wouldn't rely on that test date if you're not looking to travel far for a student to take that. And also just one other note, even though the only test date that we're offering here at Hyde Park is in March, there are lots of other schools in the area that hold these tests. So if your student for some reason can't get a seat in the March test here, or maybe they're taking the June test, they can go over to Cary or Mineola, Garden City, other high schools in the area to take this test. So now Ms. Marino is going to go into some other parts of the college application process. She'll talk to you a bit about college essays, resume, and letters of recommendation.
Okay, so the college essay. Every student should be writing a college essay for their college applications. The good news is it only has to be a maximum of 650 words, so they're not writing a 3-page essay. It's going to be pretty short. The Common App is the common application, the most commonly used college application that is sent out to over 900 colleges, and they have essay prompts for students to choose from. Typically, there's about 5 to 6 of them. They can change, but they haven't within the last few years. But the good news is that the last essay prompt is an essay topic of a student's choice. So a student can kind of write about whatever they feel best or most connected to, so that makes it a little easier for the student. Now the supplemental essays I was bringing up before, such as Hofstra, they have a mandatory supplemental essay where you have to write why you want to attend Hofstra. There are some other colleges that have them as well, such as NYU. I believe I just saw one today for the University of Miami. So the students do have to keep a lookout and keep an organized list of what colleges have those supplemental essays, so that way they can make sure they're handing them in on time. Students can start brainstorming now, it's not too early. They can always connect with their English teacher to have them look over some ideas. And we are going to have a college essay workshop coming in the spring, so the students can look out for that. That's going to be hosted by the guidance department as well as the English department. So another thing that a student will need to start working on is their activities resume. So the purpose of an activities resume is to really highlight all the wonderful things the students have been doing from 9th through 12th grade. So I know we are a 7th through 12th grade school, but they really want to see from 9th through 12th. They're going to look at anything such as clubs and organizations. So if they're a part of any clubs at New Hyde Park Memorial High School or any organizations outside of school, athletics, both here and club sports, volunteer work, part-time jobs, any honor societies can go there. We do have linked here our honor society deadlines, or not deadlines, I apologize, criteria for each department that we have here at New Hyde Park. I know that a lot of families have been asking for that, so that is linked here with all the criteria for each different subject. And then leadership roles. So if they were a president or a secretary of a club, or if they were a captain of a sports team, we really want to highlight that experience and elevate that on the application for the resume. Now, the resume is a part of the college process. Students will be talking and adding that into their college application, but it also has another criteria. It has another really important factor to it. So we typically will ask students to give us their resumes right before we're writing them a letter of recommendation. And that really helps us see the student in a different light. So we as school counselors will automatically write one letter of recommendation for each one of our students, and then they have to ask 2 teachers. Now we typically ask for 2 academic teachers, and it doesn't have to be a subject where the student got an A in the class, got 100%, but just really where the teacher can say that they know the student has a good connection with that teacher, where they can write about them in a good light. So we ask the students to ask the teachers first in person, and then provide them with the letter into the letter of recommendation. So after the students will ask the teachers, provide the letter of recommendation, provide the resume, then the students will send a request through Naviance, which I'll go into in a little bit. And then we ask the students to really just select the teachers that the students know best or have seen growth within that student.
So how can you as parents help your child during the college process? The college application process should really be a partnership between students, parents, and counselors. It's really going to be a student-driven process. So the student is the one that's completing the work, filling out the applications. The counselor is acting as the coach who can provide information and feedback. And the parent is really the facilitator. But the parent is not going to be the one that's filling out all of the college applications. The parent will, however, have a big part in filling out the financial aid information, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. So now that the student has taken their standardized tests, they're thinking about their essays, letters of recommendation, how do they decide where they want to apply? So now is the time for the student to start really thinking about what they're looking for in a college. So some questions that they can ask themselves are, what are my interests and career goals? What majors are offered at certain colleges? Do I like the location, size, and feel of the campus? Can we afford it as a family? And do I have the grades and scores to get in? So that last question is what we try to answer when we're creating this list of schools. So when counselors are working with students, we're making sure that students have a nice balanced list of schools. So what does that mean? We like to use these terms target, safety, and reach schools. So target schools are those schools where we feel the student has a pretty good chance of getting in. The student's GPA and test scores are right in line with what the college is looking for, right in that middle 50% range that the college is looking for. Safety schools are those in which we think the student has a very strong chance of getting in. So the student's GPA and test scores are much higher than what the college is looking for. So for example, if a college is looking for a student with an 80 GPA and they have a 95 GPA, we can pretty confidently say that we think that student is going to be admitted to that college. Then we have reach schools. So reach schools are those in which the student's GPA and test scores are falling lower than that middle 50% range that the college is looking for. So, we have a lot of students that will apply to Ivy League schools. So these students could be, students with very high GPAs and test scores. However, for those very competitive schools, it's kind of unpredictable to know, is this student going to be admitted or not? Because there are so many students that apply, and the college is only accepting a small percentage of those students. And then typically, in terms of the number of schools that we encourage students to apply to, we would say the average is about 8 to 10 schools, but that can really vary. Sometimes we see students applying to many more, sometimes students only apply to a handful of schools, really depending on what they're looking for, what they're planning to study, and all of those factors.
So I brought up Naviance before as a way that we ask the students to request letters of recommendation from their teachers. Naviance is a wonderful program. It's our online college and career readiness platform that we use with our students and have been using with them since the 7th grade, so you may have heard of it previously. Right now, for the college process, it's great because they can do individualized college searches. So there is a feature called the Advanced College Search where a student can go ahead and put down very specific identifiable information to what they're looking for. So if they know they want to play Division II soccer in Florida and Massachusetts that has a college for business, they can go ahead and put all that information in, hit search, and all that information, all the colleges that have all those things will be available and listed for them to review and see. So they can save those colleges in the Colleges I'm Thinking About tab. We, as their counselors, would have access to see that those are the colleges that they're looking at. And then it also has it all in one place for them. Also, another great thing that Naviance has to offer is called the scattergrams, which really helps students figure out, is this school a safety school, a target school, or a reach school for me? So we just showed you some photos. We have some photos up here that really goes into what each of those things are that I just mentioned. This is what it'll look like when when a student will favorite a college in the college I'm thinking about tab, and then we as a counselor see this. These colleges' names, they're hyperlinked, so you can go ahead and click on that college and explore more of what the college has to offer. It takes you straight to their website. And then this is that scattergrams that we were just referring to. So up here is actually Baruch College, which is a very popular college for our students to apply to. As you can see, there's a lot of green checks and red X's. So the green check marks are actually students who have applied and were accepted, and the red X's are the students who applied and were denied, all from New Hyde Park Memorial High School from the previous few years. So you're able to see, okay, if I got a 900 SAT with an 80 GPA, a lot of those students have X marks as red X's. They were not accepted into that university. And when a student has the scattergram profile open for them individually, there's actually going to be a little blue profile, and it's going to place them where they stand. So if that student has that 900 SAT with an 80 GPA, there'll be a little blue icon there, and they'll be able to say, okay, this would be a reach school for me, or a safety, or a target. So we really encourage our students to make sure that they're looking at this so they are aware of their safety target and reach list.
Okay, so now the student has done their searches on Naviance. They've created a short list of schools that they think they might be interested in. The next step is to go and visit the campus if you can, or do a virtual tour. A lot of colleges have virtual tours now since COVID happened. But really the best way for a student to, see if they can picture themselves at this college is to go and see it. So we encourage you all, maybe during the upcoming school breaks or on the weekends, to schedule a tour with the college and go and visit and see what it's like, see what the campus culture is like, see what they have to offer. There's also something called demonstrated interest. This is a term you might hear as you're researching different colleges, especially if you're looking at smaller to medium-sized schools. Demonstrated interest is basically the college looking to see how much is the student actually interested in going to this college. So how do they determine that? They look at data that shows, did the student visit the campus? Are they reading my emails that I'm sending to them? Are they emailing the admissions department? Did they attend an open house? These are all kind of data points that the college might be looking at. Again, this is probably, more so with those smaller schools. You're not going to see, a huge school like a Penn State looking at demonstrated interest because they just don't have the time for that. But that is something to consider as you're going and visiting these campuses. There's also a lot of local college fairs that students can attend. So two of note that are coming up are the NCA Spring College Expo in April. And there's also one hosted by the National Association for Counseling, NACAC as we call it, Spring College Fair, which is on March 4th. It's a Saturday at the Nassau Coliseum. So that's another opportunity for you to go, speak with some college reps, and just kind of, find out what's out there. So the next thing I just want to go over briefly is admissions deadlines. So let's say now we're in senior year, we've got our kind of finalized list of colleges, we've gone and visited, we have all our materials ready to go. How do students know when they should be submitting these applications? So there are a few different types of admissions deadlines that these colleges have, and these are pretty much the most common ones that we see. So the first two, early action and early decision, both starting with the word early. It means that the student is typically going to be applying by November 1st or November 15th. That's usually the most common deadlines for those. But then they'll be hearing those decisions back early as well. So they may get a decision back in December or January, a little bit earlier than the other deadlines. But just to explain some differences between those two, because they sound very similar, but they're actually very different. So early action means that the student is acting early to get their application in. They're receiving their decision back early, but it is not binding. They can apply to as many schools early action as they would like, and they don't have to, pick and choose which one they want to do that for. But early decision means that the student is actually deciding on one college early. So they can only apply to one college early decision, and that is a binding agreement, meaning they will actually sign a form, and the parent will sign a form, and a counselor will sign a form that says, if I apply to this school early decision and I'm admitted, that means that I am 110% going to that college. Even regardless of what financial aid they might offer me, I've decided that this is the college for me. So that's, a bigger decision that we, like to talk with our students about. It's not something that we see as commonly as the early action deadline. And we do encourage students, if they're able to get their applications in early, why not? There's really no downside to an early application, and they can kind of get it out of the way a little bit earlier in the year, which is always nice to have those applications done by the time they get back from holiday break. So the other deadlines to cover are your regular decision deadlines. So this is your standard admissions deadline. Usually the earliest those would be due by is January 1st, but it could go up until, into March. And the decisions for those, the student may not hear back until April. However, they'll still have until May to make their decision. It's the same thing with early action, as I mentioned earlier. They're submitting their application early, but they don't have to decide until May for early action. And then there's also something called rolling admissions. So a lot of the local schools in the area use rolling admissions. Basically what this means is that as applications are rolling into the college, they are sending out their admissions decisions. So there's no real set deadline, but we don't want students to apply to colleges in June for next September, because eventually these colleges' enrollment will fill up, or they may run out of financial aid. So even though it's a little bit more flexible on when they can submit it, we still encourage students to get those in a timely manner.
So just really quickly, I just wanted to make mention about early decision. Ms. Pulsifer was talking about it. If a student applies to a school early decision and they get accepted to that school, they have to attend that university. That's what we mean by a binding contract. But students will, it's really a decision that has to be made with the parent, the student, and the counselor. We want to make sure 100% that the student will go to that college. They feel it's the best college for them. So we do really have a whole family unit conversation when students want to apply to a school as early decision. So now they're applying to colleges, they're getting their acceptances, we're really excited. How are they going to afford it? So that's what financial aid is for. The application will open up October 1st of their senior year. We are going to have a financial aid night next year for you to attend. And it's an application process that takes your tax information, and the government uses that information to determine how much financial need a college is going to give you in student loans and grants. There's also another application called the CSS profile. Not every college does require the CSS profile, but some of them do, so we just like to make mention of it here. That is available on the college's websites, and the students also receive emails about it if it is required. Another way a student can pay for college is through scholarships. So during their senior year in their Guidance Google Classroom, we will be posting a monthly scholarship bulletin for the students to look through and see if they're eligible for applying for scholarships. And then currently right now on their Guidance Google Classroom, we have listed scholarship search engines that they can go ahead and start taking advantage of now. Scholarships are work. It's not just like throwing your name in a hat. You do have to typically write an essay or have very specific information to provide for the scholarship. But there are wonderful scholarships out there for our students. If we have any student athletes in the room, so any student who wants to play for the NCAA at a collegiate level, specifically for NCAA Division I or Division II, those students must register at the NCAA Eligibility Center. So we just wanted to make mention of that here. We do have Mr. Mitchell, who's one of our school counselors, as the NCAA liaison, and he is meeting with any student athlete in the fall and in the spring to get them started on this process if they have not gotten started on it already. So what are your next steps, or what are the students' next steps? Of course, to keep their grades up, that should be their priority right now, do well in their classes, talk to their teachers if they're struggling, prepare to take the SAT or the ACT, complete that college search on Naviance, begin researching those colleges and building their resume. All of these things are going to be discussed at length with the students in an individual counselor meeting around March. So it'll be after we come back from the break, starting in February, sorry about that. And to help prepare them for these things, we are, as we discussed throughout the presentation, going to be hosting a college essay workshop. And then in August, we will have what is called the Common App Boot Camp. We did this past August. It was really successful, where we have the seniors come in and they start the actual college application with us. So it gets that going for them right away, right before the school year starts. And we are here as the counselors to help them throughout the entire process. We understand it can seem overwhelming, but we are definitely here to support them and help them with anything that they need and any questions they may have.
Thank you so much. I did just want to also mention briefly when we were talking about college applications, we do host something here in New Hyde Park called on-site admissions. I don't know if any of you have heard of it or if the students in the audience have seen, some of our seniors this year. They dress up, a college representative comes in, and they actually interview students on the spot and give them a decision at New Hyde Park. So we do have many participating colleges, such as Malloy, LIU, Adelphi, St. John's, NYIT. Those are some of the local schools. And some benefits of doing that, they waive the application fee for students. They're mostly hosted in November and December. So if students meet a certain criteria that the college sets for on-site admissions, they can get an admissions decision on the spot, and sometimes even scholarship, merit-based scholarship money on the spot from these colleges. So those are just some of the opportunities that we offer to students that will be coming up in the fall. We did also briefly discuss our Google Classroom that we use for our juniors. So all of your children should be on our Google Classroom, but that is really just the best way for us to get in touch with all of the students. So if you go home tonight and you want to ask them for permission to see also the Google Classroom, you can do so you can see what we post there for students. You can know when we're going into the classrooms to see them, what we're posting for them. And then this presentation will be on our school website. Once the video is all set and edited, we're going to put that up, as well as the slides. So you're able to click on any of the links for SAT, ACT registration. You can click on any of the other hyperlinks we have on here with information. So now I just want to open it up if anyone has questions.